All right, here we are. Brennan Wall here with another edition of Film Talk. We've got Miles. Is it Doleac? Is that the correct?
That is correct. Doleac.
All right, first attempt. Awesome. Here to talk about his film, The Historian. So just before we get going into the details here, can you tell us where that is available via video on demand? Is that right?
Yes, The Historian, which was my first feature, is currently available on all of the major streaming outlets, save Netflix. So you can find it on Amazon, iTunes, Google Play, Vudu, all that good stuff, Xbox. So please do check it out. It was really a labor of love, and we're really pleased with the film. It stars the great William Sadler, who was so enamored with our working relationship that he came back and shot a second film with me, The Hollow, which we've just wrapped post-production on. So some really, really wonderful performances, both from Bill Sadler, John Cullum, Colin Cunningham of Falling Skies fame, Glennis O'Connor, the siren of the late 1970s, in films like Ode to Billy Joe and The Boy in the Plastic Bubble with John Travolta, if you remember that. So we hope folks will check it out. It's out there, and everybody who sees it, especially those with any connection or experience in academia, seem to really, really like it. So real proud of that film.
Awesome. And I noticed you picked a very appropriate location for your interview here.
Yeah. Yes, this is my home office, so I'm an actual historian in real life, or it's one of my many jobs. So yeah, I'm speaking to you from my home library.
So let's talk about a bit about your early career, I guess. So what made you? What was the first thing, I guess, that made you want to get into filmmaking?
Well, my father took me to see Raiders of the Lost Ark when I was 6 years old at the theater, and I was never the same after that. I was just completely taken aback and enthralled by what Steven Spielberg and Harrison Ford were doing in that film, and really ever since then I wanted to be involved in movies and in the theater in some capacity. I knew it way back when. I hit the stage early in my life here in my hometown of Hattiesburg, Mississippi. At the time, my high school here had an incredible drama program, one of the best programs in the region, and I was afforded a number of just amazing opportunities. I got to travel to drama festivals and that sort of thing. So I was very, very fortunate to get to engage and pursue my dreams from a very early stage. And after that, I went to North Carolina School of the Arts, got an undergraduate degree in drama, went to New York and LA, and admittedly mostly worked in food service for many years, which is how I wound up gravitating toward academia as well, and ultimately getting a PhD in history. Wound up in New Orleans just in time for Hurricane Katrina. But the good news is thereafter Hollywood really invested in Louisiana and especially the greater New Orleans area, and suddenly there were a lot of opportunities, not only to do independent films, but big time television, and so I was sort of able to be on a dual track there for a while, engaging my academic life and then pursuing those old dreams of being in the movies. And The Historian really grew out of that.
Yeah, and I noticed you did a lot of like Greco-Roman history, so, like studies when you went for your schooling, and I thought that was interesting that you said this is your first feature, right?
The Historian was my first. I've done two now. The Hollow, which is not out yet, we've just completed post-production on it, but yes, The Historian was my first.
I just think that's really interesting. Like I don't know. Do you find like directors like first feature is always like I kind of see like a trend where it's almost like the most personal film for a director.
I think that's very true, and The Historian was very personal for me, and it was born out of some of the trends I saw going on in higher education as I went through graduate school and started teaching myself. Some disturbing trends I saw, in fact, but my second film, when I set out to write it, I had a completely different notion in mind. Foundationally, I began with the idea that I wanted to write something that was more immediately marketable, immediately more commercial. But with the historian, it was almost like an expurgation of sorts. It was me trying to express something and say something that was deeply meaningful to me and personal to me and observational on a number of fronts. So there's no question that one really, really came from the heart.
Yeah, no, and I think you can really see it when you're watching it. Like, even not knowing about your past, like your studies and everything, I think you can. It really comes out in the movie as well.
Well, thank you, I appreciate that.
Um, yeah, no, I was gonna mention William Sadler too, because he's a big Hollywood actor. One thing I wanted to point out, and I wanted to see if this was a conscious decision.
Okay.
There's a scene where he's doing some sort of like calisthenics martial arts. Is that a reference to Die Hard 2?
It is a little bit of an homage to Die Hard 2.
Okay.
It helped that it worked perfectly for the character. This guy, Valerian Hadley, seemed precisely the sort of guy that would, calm himself down by engaging in some sort of Eastern martial arts kata or philosophy or exercise regime. So it worked perfectly, but it also helped that he had played Colonel Stewart in Die Hard and has that famous scene where he's doing the nude kata at the very beginning. So yeah, it was a little bit of a wink to Die Hard 2.
I thought so, because I watched that scene. I was like, that looks awfully familiar.
Bill got a kick out of that as well.
Did you write that into the script after you knew he was going to be in the film, or before?
I wrote it once we had Bill locked.
Okay.
So once again, it was perfectly in keeping with his character. So I didn't feel like it was coming out of nowhere. But when we had Bill, I couldn't resist.
Yeah, yeah. No, and like I like the idea of the film. It's almost like I don't know if I'm saying this right, but like a tete-a-tete between you and Bill.
Yeah.
And you guys, like, it's very tense between you. The chemistry is very good. Not that you seem like friends or anything, but it's just like, even when you're just staring at each other, there's like adversity there.
Well, Bill and I had a very positive working relationship from the beginning, even in the early conversations we had before we met face to face, over the phone or email, talking about the character. I could just tell that there was a chemistry there, that we got along very well. We shared similar kind of artistic tendencies, and when he got on set, we just seemed to speak the same language. So those scenes worked really, really well, because I think we very much were on the same page, and we enjoyed working together. We were perfectly willing to listen to one another. He was absolutely game for whatever I threw at him from a directorial perspective, and there's a guy that's been around the business for a very, very long time and had a lot of good ideas to bring to the table on his own. And I said, hey, I'm not the smartest guy in the room. This guy's been around the movie business a lot longer than I. And so I was really open to having him bring his ideas and his creative vision to that character as well. So it was just a very, very positive relationship. And Bill and I have since become good friends. And like I said, he came back for a second film on The Hollow. So it's a relationship that I really cherish.
Yeah, and Bill is the kind of guy, he's very versatile, because he'll go from playing, this role to maybe like the villain in Die Hard 2, and then you see him in like Bill and Ted as like the devil, right?
Right. Grim Reaper, right, with a Czechoslovakian accent. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably the thing most people would remember him from, or Die Hard 2 as well. Now, I want also you give him a lot of depth, because like a lot of movies I see like this like this snobby professor, and there's not a lot more to it. But in this movie, you gave him the father character too,
Yeah.
who clearly has the form of like dementia or Alzheimer's. What came into writing that? Was that sort of something that you had experienced firsthand, or?
Both of my grandparents on my mother's side, who I was very close to, suffered from dementia later in life, and it's just the most tragic thing imaginable to see someone slowly losing their mind in front of your eyes. And so I incorporated some of that, my own personal experience, into the script with the John Cullum character, Brightston Hadley. And I also thought it was a way to humanize the character of Hadley Bill's character. I mean, the fact of the matter is, the most interesting on-screen antagonists or villains are also incredibly human. I mean, if they're just one-note kind of caricature villain, that's not particularly interesting. But if you look at the work that, say, Ralph Fiennes does in Schindler's List, or more recently Michael Fassbender in 12 Years a Slave as Edwin Epps, those characters are terrifying, and I don't think Bill's villainy perhaps quite approaches those two, but what's terrifying about those characters is how human they are, how real they are, and how in moments, even as they do these horrific things, they manage to make you sympathetic to whatever it is. And so when I wrote Hadley, I didn't want him to be this one-note antagonist. I didn't want him to be this sort of villain per se. I wanted to give him some complexity and some depth and make him as human as possible. And his relationship with his father, I think, certainly goes a long way toward doing that. Those are really my favorite scenes in the movie. If for no other reason, watching Bill and the legendary John Cullum do what they do together, these lovely little duets, they were an absolute pleasure to work with.
Yeah, and like you were saying, I think it really holds his character together too, because I think those are the only, well, at least early on, those are the only scenes you really get an idea of his humanity, right?
Right.
Now, you said that there was some stuff that happened while you were attending university that you kind of picked up on and incorporated into the movie. One thing I picked up on was seemed to be a big topic in the movie was the kind of like, I don't know a better word to use, but it's kind of like a dumbing down of courses to kind of push people forward.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely noticed this when I attended university for certain courses. They seemed a little like, but is this something you experienced too, like sort of pushing people forward?
Yeah, absolutely. The problem with, or one of the most significant, serious problems with higher education right now, in my opinion, and certainly in the humanities, which is the majority of my experience, is that everyone is beholden to the budget committee nowadays, and retention rates are such a huge thing now, to the extent that faculty are really pushed by administrators to keep students in classes at any cost, to pass students at any cost. There is certainly a very real pressure from the administration, and it's not just at the university where I teach, it's at every university, to make sure these students get through, regardless of whether the students themselves are doing the work, whether they're motivated, whether they're showing up in class. And the day of the really, really tough faculty member who's really going to put students through their paces, it has really kind of gone the way of the Sears catalog, unfortunately. It's just like, it's just not happening anymore, because the system won't allow it. And I imagine when I wrote Bill's character, what would an old school classicist, an old Jesuit-educated classicist from back in the day where, when you were going through high school, the nuns would rap you on the knuckles if you got something wrong. How would that guy approach the current state of higher education? And I decided that he would be very, very bitter about it and probably taking it out on everyone around him, and unfortunately, first and foremost, the students, who, of course, are perhaps the least to blame in this. It's really the system that is at fault. But I thought it was a very interesting dynamic to take this old school classicist and throw him into a situation where higher education has in fact been dumbed down. There's no question about it, and continues to be, unfortunately, because the fact of the matter is budget cuts are coming down the pike every day now, and humanities are the first thing to get hit. The arts and the humanities, science and medicine and those types of things, they at least have broader and more immediately real fiscal applications. Whether it's military or whatever, pharmaceuticals or you name it. But the humanities, which have always been first and foremost about creating more well-rounded, more socially responsible, more educated human beings, educated for the sake of education. Well, that doesn't have much immediate economic impact, and so it's the first to get cut. And that's a really, really unfortunate dynamic, in my opinion.
Yeah, and like it's almost like it's operating more as a business than as an
Yeah,
educational institution,
precisely.
and that coming down to numbers rather than, you know. So are you now? I don't know if I don't remember if I read this or not. Are you still teaching, or are you?
I do still teach at the University of Southern Mississippi in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and I teach both classics and film at this point. I teach Latin, Greek, history of the ancient world, early church, and then I also teach one film course a semester.
Okay. And did you have now? How did you juggle that and doing your film at the same time?
Very, very delicately. Both of my films to this point have been shot during the summer,
Okay.
when we're out of school, so that certainly helps. But my university has to date been very, very understanding and in fact supportive of my creative endeavors. And so I have just a really good situation if I need to be away for some period of time, either for an acting gig or what have you. But I do try to schedule the things that I direct in a time where classes are not in session, so I can give 110% to that, because teaching is something that I feel is incredibly important, and something that I enjoy doing and find incredibly fulfilling, especially now in our current environment. So I want to keep doing that, but I want to keep directing films as well.
And so you managed. Did you film the movie at that university or?
I did. I did. The
Okay.
movie is shot entirely at the university at which I worked. Yep.
Oh well, that's great. That saves you a lot of headache at least.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, so I wanted to mention something else because you got something coming out here, series on the CW called Containment.
hmm
When does that start?
Containment premieres on April 19th on the CW. Got really nice placement around The Flash, which has been a big hit for the CW. It's a new series by Julie Plec, who is a showrunner who's has an incredible reputation and has been behind some of the CW's biggest hits, like The Vampire Diaries and the originals. The show is about a mysterious virus with a 100% mortality rate that breaks out in the city of Atlanta, home to the CDC, and I think perhaps that's no accident. I'm not revealing too much by saying that. And the immediate fallout of that outbreak and the chaos that ensues when authorities are forced to quarantine or cordon off a large portion of the city. Families are split up, and you have characters on either side of this cordon zone. My character is Captain Lee Scott, who is the National Guard captain who's brought in to run security in this increasingly escalating situation, who comes to loggerheads with the Atlanta police liaison, Lex Carnahan, who's played by the wonderful David Jesse, who's the main character in the series. So it's very, very exciting. It's so real world. It's so ripped from the headlines, which makes it so terrifying. In fact, while we were shooting this fall, the news broke about the Zika virus outbreak in South America and the possible repercussions of that. And of course, 2 summers ago, we had Ebola, and everyone feared the bird flu before that. So the very real world implications of a potential viral outbreak like this really heighten the drama in this show and make it all the more terrifying. And I think Julie and Charles Beeson and Chris Ord, the producers, the writers, have done an exemplary job with the show, and they're really pushing the envelope. It's sort of new ground for the CW, and I'm very, very excited about how it's going to be received.
Awesome. So April 19th on the CW, Containment is what it's called.
Yes.
Containment. Awesome. Yeah, no, it kind of when you were talking about that, it kind of reminded me of that movie that came out a few years ago with I don't even remember what it was called, but it had like Contagion. That's what it was.
Contagion. Right.
Yeah.
Steven Soderbergh film.
Those kind of movies are terrifying because you watch it and you're like, you know what, this could happen.
Yeah. Yeah, very, very, very. It's very feels very visceral, very real, very close to home indeed. I think it's going to do well. I like to call it Homeland meets 24 meets The Walking Dead, and it really has some of the best elements of all those shows. So if you're into political thriller, it's got that element. If you're into, people who are bleeding from various orifices and running after people, it has that element too. So and a lot of human drama in between. So I think it's going to find a pretty wide audience.
Awesome. So besides that, so you said The Hollow, you also worked with William Sadler on that. Is that also available on all platforms?
The Hollow is not out yet. It's
okay. Post-production,
yeah,
right?
We're doing we're going to be running the festival circuit here in the spring and the summer, and it's going to be released formally via Uncorked Entertainment in the fall with a theatrical release, followed by a release on Blu-ray, DVD, and all the major streaming platforms. It's a Southern noir murder thriller. That has Bill Sadler in it again, James Callis, who played Gaius Baltar in Battlestar Galactica, William Forsythe is in it, who audiences know from The Rock and Boardwalk Empire and other things, Jeff Fahey, David Warshawski, who was in There Will Be Blood and Taken, Christian Seidel, also from Boardwalk Empire, who played Michael Shannon's wife in that. Just a tremendous cast. It's sort of noir crime drama in the spirit of No Country for Old Men or John Sayles' Lone Star or a bit of season 1 of True Detective with a little smattering maybe of a Tennessee Williams play. Tennessee is a great hero of mine, literary hero of mine, who was born here in my home state in Columbus, Mississippi. So we're really excited about that film as well, and it's going to hit theaters sometime this fall. Haven't set a firm release date yet, but that's all in the planning stages.
Okay, awesome. And do you have anything else that you're currently working on or filming or anything that you want to promote?
I've got a couple of things that I've already shot coming out. I'm on an episode of NBC's new series, Game of Silence. I'm involved in Alex Haley's Roots, the reboot by the History Channel. I'm slated to direct a wonderful film called Comes an Angel, which Lisa Bruce is producing. Lisa, who produced Theory of Everything, which was nominated for the Best Picture Oscar 2 years ago, won Eddie Redmayne the Best Actor Oscar. She was the EP, executive producer on The Hollow, and she had brought me this wonderful script called Comes an Angel, very socially relevant, about an encounter that a young Iraqi girl has with an American soldier in Iraq during 2008, during the period of the surge. And it's a tragic encounter that sort of alters the trajectory of both of their lives, and it winds up coming to the United States, and it's sort of the fallout of that encounter. But so important right now in our current political environment. I'm really excited to be working on that film, and we hope to have cameras rolling on that film later this year. And then I'm also directing some theater and have a couple more acting gigs down the pipeline. So staying busy and a lot of exciting things to come, I hope.
I'm going to say, yeah, between that and the acting, directing, and the writing, and the teaching, you're a busy man.
Yep, I like it that way.
All right, well, hey, I want to thank you. Thanks for dealing with all the delays today. Thanks for stopping by for the interview. And good luck with your future projects.
Thank you, sir. It was my pleasure being here.